A battered German shepherd walks into a hospital, alone, carrying an unconscious little girl on his back. No owner, no explanation. But what this K9 revealed next left doctors frozen and the country in shock. It was an ordinary afternoon in the emergency room. Blaring beeps, hurried footsteps, the sharp smell of antiseptics clinging to the air. Nurses were cycling between trauma bays, doctors scanning charts, and visitors murmured in the waiting area. Everything was routine, until the automatic doors hissed open, and in walked something no one had ever seen before. A German shepherd. He was large, muscular, and panting hard. His fur was matted with dirt, a few patches streaked with dried blood. But it wasn't his condition that stopped everyone cold. It was what he carried. Slumped across his broad back, barely conscious, was a small girl. No shoes, blood-streaked forehead, a pale pink dress torn and dirty. Her tiny arms hung limp, her head resting on the dog's shoulder. A hospital intern screamed. "What the?" The front desk nurse stood frozen, mouth slightly open, unsure if her eyes were deceiving her. The dog looked around wildly, his chest heaving. Then, as if sensing where to go, he began trotting toward the nurse's station, weaving between wheelchairs and patients, his paws echoing on the cold tile floor. Chaos erupted. "Get a stretcher," shouted one of the trauma nurses, dropping a chart and bolting toward the dog. "Where's her guardian?" a doctor demanded, but no one followed the dog inside. No parent, no adult, no leash. He was alone. The girl groaned softly, her eyes fluttered, but she didn't speak. A deep gash cut across her temple, partially covered by congealed blood and dirt. One of her legs was bruised and swollen. She looked no older than 5. A male orderly reached the dog cautiously, hands up. "Easy, buddy, easy!" The German shepherd snarled, not aggressively, but protectively. He stood his ground until the nurse knelt down beside him and gently reached for the child. The dog's eyes locked onto hers, hesitant but trusting. Then, slowly, he lowered himself, letting the girl slip gently onto the waiting arms of the nurse. "She's burning up," the nurse gasped. "She's in shock. Vitals are unstable. Go, go, go!" The ER team launched into action. The girl was rushed to Trauma Bay 3 as doctors swarmed her with oxygen masks, IV bags, and rapid vitals checks. All the while, the dog stood just outside the curtain, refusing to leave. A paramedic tried to usher him away, but he growled, low and threatening. "Let him stay," one nurse said, voice firm. "He brought her here. He's not just some stray." It was then someone noticed the faded black vest strapped around the dog's body. On the side, barely visible under mud and fur, were the words, "Police K9." Everyone in the ER froze. "He's a service dog?" the doctor asked in disbelief. "No idea," the nurse replied, "but I think he just saved that girl's life." The room, once a buzz of noise and urgency, now hung in silence. The monitors beeped steadily from behind the curtain. The little girl's life now hung in the balance, and no one knew who she was, where she came from, or how this mysterious K9 had found her. Security was called, police were notified. But deep down, everyone in that hospital knew this wasn't going to be just another case. Because when a police dog walks into a hospital alone, carrying a bleeding child on his back, something extraordinary has already begun. And whatever story was behind this moment, it was far from over. Inside Trauma Bay 3, fluorescent lights bathed the room in a clinical white glow as the team surrounded the little girl. Her body was small, fragile, and limp, like a doll forgotten in a storm. A nurse clipped sensors to her chest. Another checked for broken bones, while the lead doctor examined her head wound. "She's dehydrated. Heart rate's too fast. BP is low," someone called out. "Possible concussion. Get a CT scan ready," the doctor replied sharply. The girl didn't speak. Her eyes were open now, barely. Glazed and unseeing, her gaze drifted across the room like she wasn't sure where she was, or if she was safe. The only time her expression changed was when the German shepherd let out a low whimper from outside the curtain. Her fingers twitched, the doctor noticed. "Who is she?" a young intern whispered. "No ID, no paperwork, not a single clue," a nurse replied, shaking her head. A medical social worker stepped inside, clipboard in hand. "No missing child reports matching her description in the last 48 hours, she said. I've already called CPS and the local precinct. How'd she even get here? A tech muttered. That dog just walked her in like he knew the way. The team went silent for a beat. The dog, still seated near the curtain, watching like a soldier standing guard, lifted his head slightly as if hearing his name, even though no one had spoken it. The faded police K9 patch on his vest was unmistakable now. It wasn't some novelty accessory. It was real, worn, battle-tested. Someone knelt beside him, a surgical assistant with kind eyes. "Hey there, boy," she whispered. "What's your name, huh?" He didn't respond, of course, but his ears twitched. His eyes, amber and intense, never left the girl. Meanwhile, inside the room, the doctor gently examined her arms. His fingers paused at her wrist. There were faint, linear scars. Not fresh, but deliberate. The room tensed. "Those aren't from a fall," he said quietly. "Someone's been hurting her." The nurse near the monitor swallowed hard. "She's been through hell." "She's a fighter," the trauma surgeon said. "She made it here alive, somehow." "But how?" the intern asked. "How far could a dog carry a child?" The question hung in the air. No one had an answer. The girl shifted slightly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. One nurse leaned in. "Sweetheart, can you tell us your name?" A strained breath left her mouth. Her eyes briefly flicked toward the curtain, toward the dog. Then, almost inaudibly, she whispered, "Rex." The nurse gasped. "Is that your name?" The girl blinked once, weakly shook her head, then again. "Rex." She's talking about the dog, the nurse realized. That's his name. From behind the curtain, the German Shepherd stood abruptly, tail still, posture alert. The doctor gave a slight smile. "Well, that's more than we had a minute ago." Word spread through the ER like wildfire. The dog's name is Rex. Someone ran a search for K9 units named Rex. Another called the police again to ask about missing service animals. Meanwhile, the girl drifted in and out of consciousness, always calming whenever she heard Rex's low whine nearby. Back in the waiting area, a woman wrapped in a nurse's uniform sat down hard, overwhelmed by what she'd just witnessed. "He didn't just bring her in," she whispered to a colleague. "He delivered her to safety, like he knew." It was instinct, or loyalty, or maybe something deeper. But Rex had protected her, risked everything, carried her through God knows what terrain to reach the one place where someone might still help. He wasn't just her dog, he was her guardian, her soldier, her only family in that moment. And as the machines beeped steadily and her body fought to survive, one thing was now certain in everyone's mind. The mystery hadn't been solved, it had just begun. The sterile walls of the hospital faded away in Rex's mind as he lay outside the trauma bay, ears perked and eyes fixed forward. But he wasn't just watching, he was remembering. Flashes of forest, rain, a cabin with boarded windows and a chain-link fence, a little girl crying in the corner of a dimly lit room. Her name was Lila. Rex had found her nearly a year ago, by accident. He had been part of a failed K9 operation gone wrong. His handler, Officer Daniels, had been killed during a raid deep in the hills, and Rex, injured and disoriented, had fled into the woods, vanishing without a trace. They listed him as missing in action, presumed dead. But Rex hadn't died. He survived. And in those same woods, hiding behind rotting wood and rusted locks, was Lila. She was dirty, thin, her arms bruised. And when Rex first saw her, she was curled up in a corner, whispering to herself, too scared to move. He'd crept toward her, low and slow, limping from his injury. She had looked up and smiled. "You're not bad," she had whispered. That was the moment it changed, for both of them. Day by day, Rex stayed close. He stole food from nearby trash bins, guarded her at night, barked when someone came too close to the cabin. And when the people who held her came back, Rex stood between them and her, teeth bared, growl deep, eyes locked. He took beatings for her, bite wounds, bruises, but he never left. She had begun to trust him, talk to him. She tied a piece of pink cloth around his neck once and told him he was her brave soldier. And then, just 3 days ago, everything came crashing down. The people who kept her captive got drunk, careless. Lila heard them talking about moving her again, selling her. Her tiny heart pounded. She waited until night. When they passed out, she slipped the bolt, pushed open the door, and called softly into the night. "Rex, we have to go." He had been waiting. What followed was a desperate escape. Rex led the way, cutting through woods, across a dried riverbed, through an old construction yard. Lila could barely walk. He nudged her forward, barked when she stumbled. When her legs gave out, he let her climb onto his back, and he carried her, mile after mile. Day turned to night, then dawn. His legs trembled, but he didn't stop. He remembered roads, remembered sirens, remembered hospitals. Instinct guided him. Training powered him. And love, pure, loyal love, kept him moving. Now, back in the hospital hallway, Rex's eyes remained locked on the curtain. Every time a doctor moved, he flinched. Every time a nurse's voice raised, he stood. He had been her shadow for nearly a year, her shield, her warmth in the cold, her only source of safety in a world that had turned cruel too soon. Inside, Lila lay still. Machines monitored her every breath, but her heart, weak as it was, beat with the memory of Rex curled up beside her in the dark, warm, silent, always watching. A nurse stepped out quietly and sat beside Rex. She didn't speak, just looked at him in awe. "You're not just a dog," she whispered. "You're a warrior." Rex didn't react. He didn't wag his tail. He wasn't there to be thanked or pet. He was waiting. He was guarding. A janitor passing by paused. "That dog," he muttered, "he's seen things. You can see it in his eyes." He had, and he would never forget them. Because for Rex, this wasn't just a mission. It was redemption. He had failed to save his first partner. He wouldn't fail this time. By morning, the hospital was no longer just a place of healing. It had become a hive of rumors, curiosity, and hushed speculation. The emergency room that had once buzzed with routine cases now felt like the eye of a growing storm. Word had spread fast. A K9 dog, alone, had carried in a wounded, unconscious child. No one knew where she'd come from. No one knew who she belonged to. And no one could figure out how the dog had navigated miles of terrain and found a hospital. Behind the nurse's station, a group whispered over coffee. "They say she came from the woods, like deep forest area. That's more than 15 miles out." "No way she walked all that. Not in that condition." "She didn't," a voice said. It was Clara, one of the night shift nurses. "The dog carried her." That line sent a chill through everyone at the counter. Down the hall, 2 security officers watched Rex through the glass. He hadn't moved much, still sitting, still waiting. A living statue of focus and fatigue. "Something about him freaks me out," one of the guards muttered. "Like he's thinking." "He's a cop," the other replied. "Don't forget the vest." "Yeah, well, that vest's from another life. He's not registered in any active unit." "Not anymore." In an admin office upstairs, a detective was now involved. Officer Tran, mid-40s, sharp eyes, quiet demeanor. He'd seen combat, raids, cartel busts, but never a story like this. He stood staring at a paused frame of security footage. Rex pushing the hospital doors open with his shoulder, the girl slumped over his back like a feathered weight. "Run the badge number again," he told the hospital's liaison officer. "Check missing K9 files, anything from the last 12 months. They already did. One match, unit out of state. K9 was declared KIA after a meth raid went bad. Handler was killed. No body ever found for the dog." "Until now," Tran murmured. In the pediatric wing, Lila was beginning to stabilize. Her vitals had improved, though she still hadn't spoken much. But the trauma team now had more questions than answers. Old bruises, healing fractures, the scarring on her wrist. She hadn't been lost, she'd been hidden. And someone had kept her that way. A social worker sat beside her, gently brushing her hair back. "Lila, sweetheart, do you remember where you came from?" The little girl didn't respond. She turned her head slightly toward the door, toward Rex. "Do you know anyone named Mommy or Daddy?" The woman tried again. Lila blinked, then quietly whispered, "No." Across the hospital, conversations turned to debates. Why didn't the dog go to the police? How did he know to come here? What if someone's still looking for her? What if someone's looking for him? The whispers swelled into concern. Was this little girl a missing person? An escapee? A witness? And was Rex just a loyal companion or a key to something darker? The hospital director, under pressure from media inquiries, issued a soft, no comment. But it was too late. Someone had already taken a photo, a blurry snapshot of the dog standing guard beside the trauma room door, eyes sharp and loyal. By noon, it was trending. Hero dog, guardian Rex. And still, Rex waited, unbothered by the whispers, unmoved by the buzz, because none of the questions mattered to him. Only the girl did. The quiet hum of the pediatric monitors filled the room, each beep a fragile heartbeat in the stillness. Lila lay beneath soft hospital sheets, her small hands resting above the blanket. Her face, once pale and streaked with dried blood, now looked calm. But beneath that fragile peace, her body still told a story, one that words had not yet dared to speak. Nurse Evelyn stood by her bedside, checking vitals for the third time in the last hour. She wasn't just performing protocol. She couldn't explain it, but something about Lila got under her skin. Maybe it was the haunted silence in the girl's eyes, or the way she only stirred when the dog's shadow flickered across the curtain. When Evelyn lifted Lila's right wrist to attach the blood pressure cuff, her heart stopped. There, just beneath the skin, were thin parallel lines, some old, faded into silver scars, others newer, red and healing poorly. Evelyn froze, breath caught in her throat. Not accidental, not a fall. These were from restraint. She looked up quickly, trying not to alarm the child. "Sweetheart, does it hurt here?" she asked gently, fingers brushing over the marks. Lila blinked once, slowly, but her hand twitched away, curling into a tiny fist. Evelyn turned to the attending pediatrician. "Doctor, Hassan, look at this." He stepped forward and examined the scars carefully, his brow furrowed. "Restraint marks," he confirmed grimly. "She's been tied, likely with cords or wire, multiple times." He sighed and jotted something in the chart, his voice low. This wasn't just neglect, this was captivity. Lila turned her head to the wall. She didn't cry, she didn't argue, she simply shut down, like someone who had learned silence was safer than speaking. That was when Rex, lying just outside the room, perked up. A low rumble echoed from his throat. Evelyn opened the door quietly. Rex rose immediately, sniffing the air, before slowly stepping inside. The moment he reached the bed, Lila's curled fingers relaxed. Her eyes, just barely, softened. Rex rested his chin gently on the mattress, and for the first time since arriving, Lila reached out and placed her fingers against his muzzle. No words, just trust. Dr. Hassan watched the exchange silently. "She's bonded with him completely," Evelyn nodded. "I don't think she's had anyone else." In a small observation room nearby, Detective Tran stood behind a two-way mirror, watching it all unfold. He turned to the hospital social worker beside him. "That dog didn't just rescue her," he said. "He stayed with her through everything." The social worker, a woman named Denise, crossed her arms, eyes welling. "I've seen a lot of trauma, but this is different. That girl's trauma runs deep. And that dog, he's not just a pet, he's her lifeline." A knock at the door interrupted them. A uniformed officer stepped in. "We just got confirmation. That vest he's wearing belonged to a K-9 named Rex from the Riverside Narcotics Unit, presumed dead a year ago. His handler was killed in action during a meth raid. Rex disappeared during the firefight." Tran's eyes narrowed, which means someone found him and didn't return him. The officer nodded grimly. "And we may have just figured out who." Back in Lila's room, she was finally asleep, her breathing even, her small hand still resting on Rex's head. Evelyn sat in a nearby chair, emotionally drained. She knew this was only the beginning. For all they had uncovered, the restraint marks, the trauma, the dog's origin, none of it explained the full picture. Who had taken her? Where had she been? And most importantly, what exactly had she seen? The scars on her wrist were only the surface. But beneath that skin lay stories of darkness, waiting to be brought into the light. And beside her, unmoving, Rex stayed vigilant. Because whatever happened next, he was ready. The early evening sun cast long golden beams through the hospital windows, washing the corridors in soft amber light. Inside the security office, Detective Tran leaned over the desk, eyes narrowed at a photo on the monitor, a close-up of Rex's vest. It was grainy and dirty, the fabric worn and stitched at the seams. But something caught his eye this time, a small corroded metal tag sewn beneath the side strap. It hadn't been visible earlier beneath the mud. "Zoom in on that," Tran said. The hospital IT tech nodded and enhanced the image. Faint numbers appeared, 6 digits etched into steel. R214078. Tran's pulse quickened. "We've got a traceable tag." He immediately picked up his phone and called dispatch. "Run K9 registry, badge number R-214078. Cross-check with Riverside PD, missing or retired units." On the other end, silence lingered for a moment, then came a quiet voice. "Detective, that badge is from a K9 confirmed deceased last year. Handler was Officer Mark Daniels, died during a drug raid. The dog went missing and was presumed YJA." Tran's mouth tightened. "KIA? Not anymore." The voice on the phone paused. "That dog? You're saying he's alive?" "And not just alive," Tran said. "He just walked a wounded child into a hospital, alone." Back in the ER wing, Nurse Evelyn was finishing a chart update when she noticed Rex standing near the window, still as a statue. But now, something was different. His gaze wasn't on the girl. It was on the badge scanner near the nurse's station. He stared at it like he recognized something. "Rex?" she asked softly, stepping closer. He turned slightly, then nudged at his vest with his nose, almost deliberately. Evelyn blinked. Her hands moved gently to the strap beneath his side. She paused. There, barely visible, was the metal tag. She carefully unclipped it, holding it to the light. "Badge number," she murmured. "There's an ID." Tran walked in at that exact moment, breath sharp. "You found it?" Evelyn handed it to him. He showed me. Tran looked at Rex with new eyes, no longer as a stray miracle, but as an officer trying to be heard. "He's been trying to tell us something this whole time," Evelyn said. Tran nodded. "And now we're finally listening." In his mind, pieces were falling together. Rex had been declared lost in action. Lila was unaccounted for. No fingerprints, no ID, no matches in the system. But now, with this badge number, they had a timeline, and possibly a trail. Tran turned to Denise, the social worker. "We need to follow this, see who else was involved in that failed drug raid, see what happened after." "You think this girl is connected to that case?" Denise asked. "I think she's more than connected," he said. "I think she's the reason Rex survived." As if on cue, Rex let out a low huff, then padded back toward Lila's room. She was still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm unraveling just outside her door. But her presence, combined with that badge, had blown open a sealed case, a case that had long been buried under red tape and resignation. And now, with a metal tag as proof and a girl still healing, one thing was certain. Rex didn't just bring her here to save her life. He brought her here to finish what his partner started. The clock struck midnight, and the halls of the hospital grew quiet, eerily so. Most visitors had gone home, and the noise of the day had faded into a hush of distant machines and muffled footsteps. In Pediatric Room 3, the soft beep of Lila's heart monitor echoed like a lullaby. Nurse Evelyn stood by the window, arms crossed tightly against her chest. The lights were dimmed, but she could still see Lila's sleeping figure under the blankets, her small hand resting near Rex's paw. The dog lay curled at the foot of the bed, his ears twitching every time Lila stirred. Evelyn hadn't left her side since her shift started, and now she didn't want to. She looked at Lila's bruises, the small cuts on her knees, the scars hidden beneath her sleeves, and something in her chest cracked open. She took a shaky breath and turned away, pressing her fingers to her mouth. Her reflection in the window stared back, tired, pale, hollow-eyed. She couldn't stop the memories from flooding in. 20 years ago, Evelyn had been that girl. Small, afraid, locked in a trailer by someone who said he was her father. She remembered the sound of boots outside, the screech of tires, the blast of a door being kicked open, and then light, real blinding light, and a voice shouting, "We've got her!" She had buried it for years, but Lila's face had brought it all back. She stumbled into the hallway, trying to compose herself, but her legs were weak. She found a supply closet, opened the door, stepped inside, and let it go. The sobs came hard, deep, from a place she'd long sealed shut. She slid down to the floor, covering her mouth so no one would hear. The guilt, the empathy, the helplessness, it all came crashing in like a tidal wave. After a few minutes, she heard the quietest sound, the soft patter of paws. She looked up. Rex was standing in the doorway, silent. He stepped inside and sat beside her. She couldn't help it. She laughed softly through her tears. "You really are her guardian angel, aren't you?" He tilted his head, then gently nudged her shoulder with his nose. It wasn't just comfort, it was understanding. She wiped her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." After a long moment, Evelyn stood, her legs steadier now, and looked down at him. "She's lucky she had you. I didn't." Rex blinked slowly. Back in the room, Lila stirred. Evelyn returned just as she sat upright, wide-eyed and frightened. Her breathing was fast, panicked. A nightmare. Evelyn rushed over. "Lila, it's okay. You're safe. You're in a hospital." The girl looked around, heart racing, until her eyes locked onto Rex returning behind Evelyn. She gasped, arms stretching out. "Rex!" The dog padded quickly to her bedside. She wrapped her arms around his neck tightly, burying her face in his fur. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, tears brimming again. But this time, they didn't break her. They strengthened her. She pulled up a chair and sat beside Lila. "Would you like me to stay a while?" she asked gently. Lila nodded without speaking. "I'll be right here," Evelyn promised. "You don't have to be alone anymore." A minute later, Lila leaned back against her pillow, her fingers still gripping Rex's ear. Her breathing slowed. Sleep came more gently this time. Evelyn sat back in her chair, watching the rise and fall of Lila's chest. In that quiet moment, with the machines humming and the dog curled beside the bed, Evelyn made a vow. She hadn't been able to save herself back then, but she would fight like hell to save this little girl now. The following morning, Detective Tran sat in the hospital's small media room with a steaming coffee in hand. He hadn't slept. No one on the case had. The weight of Lila's silent trauma and Rex's impossible journey pressed on all of them. Tran's eyes were locked on the flat-screen monitor in front of him. The hospital IT team had just retrieved security footage from 3 days ago, the morning Lila and Rex arrived. But it wasn't hospital footage that held their attention. It was the drive footage pulled from a local gas station about 12 miles from the hospital, near the forest's edge. A camera mounted on a rusty pole had captured a single moment, grainy and gray. "Rewind that. There. Pause," Tran instructed. The frame froze. There, limping across the edge of the gas station lot, was Rex. His body was low, his fur filthy. Draped across his back, barely visible in the low lighting, was Lila, unconscious, her arms hanging at his sides. The timestamp blinked, 4:17 a.m. "He was trying to get help," whispered one of the officers behind Tran. "He was headed straight for town." "He knew," Tran murmured. "He actually knew." The next footage came from a security camera at a construction site 2 miles down the road. This one showed Rex walking down the shoulder of a 2-lane highway, pausing only when headlights passed. Each time a car came, he shifted to shield the girl from view, stepping between her and the road. A lump caught in Tran's throat. Rex wasn't just a survivor. He was tactical, protective, relentless. Then came the footage from a wildlife camera, hidden deep within the wooded trail behind the abandoned farm road. What they saw turned every stomach in the room. Lila, much thinner, dirt-covered, trembling, crouched beside a cabin, staring through broken boards. A man appeared at the door, yelling something, before throwing a bottle to the ground. The soundless video didn't capture voices, but the aggression was clear. Behind Lila, Rex waited, watching. Then the man stumbled inside. Lila turned, reached for Rex's vest, and began walking. Slow, cautious. She held onto his side like a crutch. The timestamp showed it was 1:03 a.m. She had walked for hours, no adult in sight. Just a wounded girl and a forgotten K9. Tran's fists tightened. They pulled up another clip, this time a local convenience store, security cam from the back alley. It showed Lila collapsing. Rex circled, sniffing the air, clearly panicked. When she couldn't rise, he laid down beside her. 3 minutes passed, then he did something extraordinary. He crouched, then shifted his body, wedging himself under her torso, then slowly stood, lifting her small body onto his back. The entire room fell silent. Even the officers who had seen the worst the world had to offer stood stunned. One of them muttered, "He carried her the rest of the way." Tran nodded slowly. Every last step. The final footage came from the hospital's front entrance. It was already known, but watching it now, in sequence, hit differently. Rex pushing the sliding doors open with his muzzle, stepping inside with Lila on his back, making a beeline for the nurse's station as if led by instinct or memory or both. But then, something caught Tran's eye. "Wait, go back, zoom in on the doorway." The footage rewound. The moment Rex entered, a pair of headlights passed slowly by the hospital entrance. A black SUV. No plates. Tran leaned forward. "That's not coincidence." He hit the intercom. "Get me traffic cam data on Westbridge Avenue between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Black SUV, no tags." The room buzzed into motion. Back in Lila's hospital room, she stirred slightly. Evelyn was brushing her hair gently when Lila opened her eyes. The nurse smiled. "Good morning, sweetheart." Lila looked around, lips parting. "Where's Rex?" "Just outside," Evelyn assured her. "He never left." Lila blinked. "The bad men, they'll come back." Evelyn paused. "Not if we can help it. You're safe now." But her words echoed hollow. Because out there, somewhere, someone was still watching. Someone who had kept her hidden, who had tried to erase her existence. And now, someone who had seen Rex escape, with her. That SUV hadn't just driven by, it had been following them. They weren't out of danger yet, but now they had evidence. Now they had faces. Now, for the first time, Lila had an army behind her, and a dog who'd walk through hell to keep her alive. The black SUV had changed everything. With the footage now in hand and Lila's condition slowly stabilizing, Detective Tran wasted no time. By midday, he and a tactical team rolled out toward the edge of the forest, retracing the route Rex had taken, mile by mile. They drove past gas stations, overgrown trails, and narrow roads swallowed by trees, until finally, they found it. The cabin. It sat crooked among the woods, shrouded in vines and silence, as if the earth itself had tried to reclaim it. The windows were shattered, the paint peeled in long gray strips. What was once a home now looked like the scene of a forgotten nightmare. Tran stepped out of the SUV slowly, gloved hands ready. "This is it," he said. The officers behind him nodded, drawing weapons as they approached. The front door hung loose, creaking with every breath of wind. Tran motioned for two officers to take the rear, while he and another entered the front. The inside was worse. The air was heavy, stale, musty, and bitter with rot. Old beer cans littered the floor. Cracked dishes were strewn across a broken table. But what grabbed everyone's attention was in the far room. Chains. Rusty metal links bolted into the wooden floor, and beside them, a single pink sock. Tran's jaw tightened. In the corner, a torn child's book lay open, the edges worn from nervous fingers. Across the walls, scribbled in faded crayon, were crooked drawings, stick figures, suns and flowers. A child's desperate attempt to create beauty in a prison. "This is where they kept her," one officer said grimly. "Check the basement," Tran ordered. The floorboards groaned under their weight as they moved toward the cellar door. It creaked open, revealing a pitch-black descent. They flicked on their flashlights. What they saw made one officer gag. Mattresses, ropes, a table lined with syringes, crates filled with children's clothes, none matching Lila's size, and in the far corner, stacked neatly, were dozens of sealed folders. Tran opened one. Photos, names, ages. Not just Lila, other children, a trafficking operation. "Get back up," Tran growled. "Now!" The team cleared the house room by room. In a hidden compartment beneath the stairs, they found a map, marked with pins across counties. It wasn't just a cabin, it was a waypoint, a holding cell, a dark stop along a long, hidden route. And somehow, Lila had escaped it, with Rex. Outside, the sun began to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Tran stood on the porch, staring at the worn path leading away from the house, the same trail Rex must have taken. He imagined it, the dog nudging the girl forward, carrying her when she stumbled, dodging headlights, crossing broken ground, all to bring her to safety. How many more? The younger officer beside him asked, his voice quiet. Tran looked down at the pink sock in his hand. Too many. He handed the folders to the crime scene team. Every name, every photo, cross-check with missing persons reports. I want a full list before nightfall. By the time they returned to the city, the cabin had been declared a federal crime scene. News helicopters circled above. The story had exploded. A police K-9, thought to be dead, had uncovered a child trafficking ring, not with barks, but with loyalty and action. Back at the hospital, Evelyn watched from the break room TV, hand covering her mouth as she saw the first aerial shot of the cabin. Lila sat quietly nearby, eyes on the screen. That's where we were, she said softly. Evelyn turned, her voice gentle. You don't have to talk about it, sweetie. Lila shook her head. I just remember being cold. Rex would let me sleep against him. He made me warm. In that moment, Evelyn understood. Rex hadn't just saved Lila's life. He'd been the only light in a place built entirely of shadows. And now, because of him, those shadows were being dragged into the light, before the hospital, before the cabin, before the forced escape. Rex had a different life. He wasn't just a hero by accident. He was trained for it. 2 years ago, Rex was one of the most elite K-9s in the Riverside Narcotics Unit. Intelligent, agile, and fiercely loyal, he had been partnered with Officer Mark Daniels, a seasoned handler known for his calm authority and quiet bond with animals. Together, they'd taken part in dozens of operations, raids, drug busts, search and rescue. Their connection wasn't just professional, it was family. Daniels never treated Rex like a tool. He called him Buddy during downtime, let him ride shotgun, talked to him like he could understand. And Rex always did. Then came the night that changed everything. A high-stakes raid had been planned on an isolated farmhouse suspected of being a meth lab and child trafficking exchange point. The team was briefed. The targets were armed, dangerous, and possibly holding minors as leverage. Daniels insisted on bringing Rex. They'll hide, he told his captain. If there are kids in there, Rex will find them. He always does. The mission began at dusk. The team moved in, weapons drawn, coordinated and swift. But the moment they breached the door, everything unraveled. Booby traps, false walls, armed guards. Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the halls. The team split in two, trying to secure each section. Daniels and Rex pushed into the back. That's when it happened. A tripwire detonated a small explosive hidden behind the basement door. The force blew them apart. Daniels was thrown into a steel cabinet, unconscious. Rex, dazed and bleeding from the side, crawled to his partner, barking wildly. Smoke filled the air. The team's radios crackled with static. Then, silence. By the time backup cleared the building, the room was empty. Daniels was dead, and Rex, gone. They searched for days. Canines don't typically vanish without a trace, but the area was dense, forests, rivers, unmarked trails. They presumed Rex had either died from his wounds or had been taken. The department held a memorial for Officer Daniels and his loyal companion. They buried an empty casket, but Rex wasn't gone. Injured, confused, and grieving, he had survived. Somewhere in that forest, he woke up alone. For days, he limped through the wilderness, his training overridden by pain and instinct. But the memory of Daniels lingered, his voice, his touch, his command. That voice echoing in his mind kept him alive. Then, one cold night, Rex heard crying, high-pitched, afraid. He followed it and found her, Lila. That moment changed everything. Something inside him shifted. It wasn't duty, it was something deeper, a need to protect, a second chance. And so, the wounded K-9 stayed by her side. Every night, every storm, every threat. Her safety became his new mission. He trained her in his own silent way, nuzzling her toward hiding spots, teaching her to stay quiet when strangers approached, growling when danger neared. When she was too weak to walk, he carried her. Just like he once followed Daniels into the fire, he followed Lila out of hell. And now, back in the hospital, that legacy lived on. Detective Tran stood beside Rex in the hallway, watching the dog rest for the first time in days. Tran had read the full report now. He'd seen the old photos, Daniels with Rex beside him, both smiling, proud. You weren't just a survivor, Tran whispered. You were a partner, and now you've become something even more. Rex didn't stir. He didn't have to. He had done what Daniels would have wanted. He protected the innocent. He gave his pain a purpose. And in doing so, he returned. Not just as a dog, but as a living tribute to the partner he lost and the girl he refused to lose. The hospital's pediatric wing had finally settled into a fragile calm. Lila was resting comfortably, her vitals steady. Evelyn sat nearby, reading her chart, and Rex dozed lightly on the floor, always within reach of her bed. For the first time in days, there was peace. Then the front desk phone rang. Receptionist Carla answered with her usual quiet tone. "Riverside General, how can I—" Her expression changed instantly. "You're here to see who?" Within minutes, a tall man in a black jacket entered through the ER double doors. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, with sharp eyes and an eerie calmness. He carried no visible ID, just a name, Lila. "I'm her uncle," he said. Security met him at the entrance. "Do you have proof of relation, sir?" He pulled out a worn envelope with some papers, including a school registration form and a faded family photo. "That's her," he said flatly. "I've been looking for her for months. Someone said she might be here." The staff was cautious. They'd heard nothing about a missing uncle. Inside the pediatric room, Evelyn was alerted over the intercom. She looked to Lila. "Sweetheart, someone's here. He says he's your uncle." Lila's eyes widened. Her breath caught. She didn't speak, just stared at the door. Then Rex stood up. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He stalked forward, his ears flat and tail stiff. A silent alarm. Evelyn knew instantly. Something was wrong. In the hallway, the man was growing agitated. "She's my niece. Her mother, my sister, died 3 years ago. She's all I've got." Tran appeared moments later, flashing his badge. "Detective Tran, Riverside PD. Mind if we verify a few things?" "I've been looking for her," the man snapped. "Now you're making it difficult." As he raised his voice, the pediatric doors opened, and Rex stepped out, his entire body tense. He locked eyes with the man and let out a guttural growl. The entire hallway froze. "No," Evelyn said, stepping behind Rex. "He's never reacted like that before." The man backed up a step. "What is this? Why is the damn dog growling?" Lila's voice cut through the tension like a whisper in thunder. "He's not my uncle." Everyone turned. She stood just inside the doorway, trembling, but her voice grew stronger. "He was the one who locked me in the cabin." Gasps filled the hallway. Rex surged forward with a snarl, but Evelyn held him back, barely. The man's face dropped its facade. "Get on the ground!" Tran shouted, drawing his weapon. The man turned to run, but security tackled him to the floor within seconds. Handcuffs clicked into place. He fought, screamed, called it a mistake, but it was over. Inside the pediatric room, Lila collapsed into Evelyn's arms, sobbing. "I thought I'd never see him again. I thought he'd find me." "You're safe now," Evelyn whispered. "He won't hurt you ever again." Rex returned to her side, nuzzling her gently. She wrapped her arms around his neck, clinging to him like a life preserver in a storm. In that moment, every doubt vanished. Every whisper became truth. Rex hadn't just brought her to safety. He had identified her abuser. He had protected her from the one face she feared most. And for the first time, justice had a heartbeat and a growl. The man had been arrested, cuffed, and hauled out of the hospital under heavy police presence. News had already reached local media outlets, but inside the hospital, everything slowed. For Lila, it was no longer about escape. It was about identity. Who was she really? Back in her room, Detective Tran stood with a small envelope in hand. It bore the emblem of the State Forensics Lab and a simple line of text. DNA results. Expedited. He entered gently. Evelyn sat beside Lila, holding her hand. Rex lay quietly at her feet, ever watchful. "We got the results," Tran said softly. Lila's big eyes looked up. She didn't speak, but Evelyn could see the question forming in them. Tran pulled up a chair. "You've been so brave, Lila. And now, we know who you are." He opened the folder and placed a photo on the table. It was old, faded, but clear. A missing child poster. Lila's face was smaller, rounder, but unmistakable. "Your real name is Lily Grace Hargrove," he said. You were reported missing 3 years ago, taken from a foster home after your parents passed away in a car accident. You were 5. Lila blinked. That's me? Tran nodded. We ran your DNA against the National Missing Persons Database. It matched immediately. Evelyn covered her mouth with a hand. She's been missing for 3 years? Yes, Tran confirmed. And the man who claimed to be your uncle, he was never related to you. He was part of a trafficking network. He forged papers, created a false identity for you. But your DNA tells the real story. Lila turned to Evelyn, her voice shaking. I don't remember my parents. That's okay, Evelyn said, stroking her hair. You don't have to. What matters now is you're safe, and you're you again. Lila looked down at Rex. He knew. Yes, Tran smiled. He always knew. The implications were vast, not just for the case, but for her future. She now had a legal name, a documented history, and protection under the law. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was real. Lily, Tran continued, using her birth name now, you don't have to go back into the system if you don't want to. We're already working on special placement options. You've been through enough. Lily nodded, gripping Rex's ear like a lifeline. As long as I can stay with him. Evelyn smiled, tears quietly sliding down her cheeks. We'll make sure of it. Outside the room, Tran handed the DNA file to the attending officer. She's not just a victim. She's a survivor with a name and a future. Where's the dog going? The officer asked. Tran glanced back at the open door. Rex had shifted closer to Lily, eyes half closed but alert. He goes wherever she goes, Tran said. That night, Evelyn printed out the photo of Lily's missing child flyer and taped it to the nurse's bulletin board. She added a note under it, found, alive and never alone. Rex stood nearby, watching silently, because the DNA didn't just reveal her identity. It revealed his purpose. He hadn't been sent to save her. He had chosen to, and in doing so, helped uncover a buried truth, one that no one, not even time, could erase. By dawn the next day, the hospital was no longer just a hospital. It had become a fortress. Reporters lined the sidewalks, camera crews battled for sidewalk space, and microphones were thrust toward every uniform that walked through the doors. A once routine emergency wing was now the epicenter of a national story, one that stunned the country and broke hearts worldwide. Hero dog saves abducted girl, read one headline. K9 missing in action, returns from the dead with a child on his back, said another. But it wasn't just the drama of the rescue that captivated people. It was the quiet dignity of the story. A dog thought to be dead. A child stolen and silenced. And a reunion born not of luck, but of loyalty and pain. Inside, the hospital staff tried to maintain a bubble of calm. Evelyn drew the blinds in Lila's room. The noise outside was too much, but still, she could feel the pulse of it through the walls. Are they talking about me? Lila asked, sitting up in bed. Evelyn nodded softly. They are, but more than that, they're talking about Rex. Lila glanced at the dog, who remained curled at her feet. He doesn't like cameras. Evelyn smiled. Neither do I. In the lobby, Detective Tran stood before a wall of microphones, delivering the department's first official statement. His voice was firm, but compassionate. Yes, the dog in question is a former member of the Riverside K9 unit. His name is Rex. He was presumed dead during a raid last year that also took the life of his handler. He survived. And he didn't just survive, he rescued a missing child, carried her for miles, and led her to safety. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. We are coordinating with state and federal authorities to investigate the broader trafficking operation uncovered as a result. But today is about a little girl who fought to live, and the dog who refused to let her die. Applause broke out among the crowd, raw, unscripted, human. Back in her room, Lila heard it faintly through the window and turned toward Rex. Do they know what you did? She asked him softly. Rex didn't respond, but his tail gave a soft wag, just once. The media storm continued to swell, but behind every headline, one truth stood tall. This wasn't just a news story. It was a reminder that heroes don't always wear badges or uniforms. Sometimes they wear scars and fur and walk on 4 legs. 1 week later, the wheels of justice began to move, faster than anyone expected. With the cabin now fully processed and the documents recovered from its hidden basement examined, a web of names, transactions, and dark trails came to light. It wasn't just one man involved, it was a network, and Lila, now Lily Grace, was the thread that unraveled it all. Detective Tran sat in a federal briefing room surrounded by agents, investigators, and digital analysts. Dozens of children's names had surfaced, many of them marked as in transit or ready for placement. Chilling phrases used like codes. It wasn't just trafficking, it was a system. Quiet, hidden, efficient, until Rex and Lily broke it. Arrests followed quickly. 4 homes in neighboring counties were raided within 48 hours. 2 more cabins were discovered, just like the one Lily had escaped from. There were survivors, children, bruised, starved, silent, but alive. When Lily heard the news, she didn't speak right away. She just sat still, hugging Rex tightly. Then she asked one question. Will they go to jail forever? Evelyn knelt beside her. A long, long time, and they'll never hurt anyone again. Lily nodded slowly. Good. Back at the precinct, Tran stood before a podium once more, the media now familiar with his calm delivery. But this time, his message was louder, stronger. This investigation is ongoing, but we are making progress, thanks to the bravery of a little girl and the unwavering instincts of a K-9 officer who never gave up. He looked down for a beat, then back to the cameras. I want every child out there who feels invisible to know, you're not. Someone will come. Someone will fight for you. At the hospital, Lily's room had changed. The medical machines were gone now, replaced by flowers, hand-drawn cards from other children, and a small stuffed bear she had named Captain Daniels in honor of Rex's first partner. But the best gift came from the courtroom. A federal judge issued a rare emergency ruling. Rex, despite being a retired K-9, would be officially transferred into protective companionship with Lily. He would remain by her side, legally, permanently. When Evelyn told her, Lily broke into tears. He's staying? He's yours, Evelyn smiled, voice shaking. Forever. That same day, Evelyn received a call from the Child Welfare Board. They wanted to know if she would consider being Lily's foster guardian, if not something more permanent. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely. That night, Tran visited the hospital one final time. He found Lily and Rex sitting by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. You did good, kid, he said gently. You saved more lives than you know. Lily looked at Rex, then back at Tran. I didn't do it alone. No, Tran nodded. You had help. Rex thumped his tail once in agreement. Justice had come, not with vengeance, but with truth, compassion, and action. And for Lily, justice didn't just mean arrests or courtrooms. It meant freedom. It meant a name. It meant a future. And finally, it meant she was no longer a victim of the past, but the author of what came next. Spring arrived early that year. The trees were already blooming, and the air was thick with the scent of fresh soil and new life. In a quiet neighborhood just outside the city, laughter echoed down the street. It came from a small yellow house with white shutters and a wind chime that danced in the breeze. Inside that house, Lily Grace stood at the front door, clutching a small backpack. Her hair was neatly brushed, her shoes freshly tied, and a tiny heart-shaped locket hung around her neck. It had one photo inside, her new family. Evelyn, standing just behind her, adjusted Lily's jacket collar with a proud smile. You ready? Lily nodded, but her eyes darted nervously toward the yard. Then came the familiar sound, paws on wood. Rex trotted into view, head high, vest replaced with a soft collar, and tag that read, Rex Guardian. Lily grinned and dropped to her knees. You're coming too, right? Rex pressed his head against her chest, a low, content rumble escaping his throat. Of course he is, Evelyn said. First day of school or not, he's not letting you out of his sight. It had been 3 months since they left the hospital, 3 months since Lily took her first steps into a world where no one controlled her, where no one hurt her, where doors didn't lock from the outside, and in those 3 months, she had bloomed. Therapy sessions slowly pulled words from her heart. Drawing helped, so did the garden Evelyn built in the backyard, but nothing healed her more than time spent beside Rex, lying on the porch, reading stories aloud, sometimes just sitting in silence. He was her comfort, her compass, her home. The school bus arrived, tires crunching against gravel. Lily looked back once more at Evelyn, who gave her a nod. "You've got this," she whispered. Lily climbed aboard, and Rex followed to the steps. He wouldn't go inside, but he stood watch as she picked a seat and looked out the window. Their eyes met, hers wide and full of light, his calm and steady. The bus pulled away slowly, and Rex stayed on the porch until it disappeared down the road. Only then did he sit and exhale. Later that afternoon, when the bus returned, Rex was already waiting. He always would be. Lily bounded off the last step, backpack swinging, and fell into his embrace without a word. He nudged her gently, then led her toward the house. Inside, Evelyn had warm cookies waiting and a coloring book open on the table. No alarms, no fear, just peace. As night fell, Lily climbed into bed, pulling the blankets up to her chin. Rex jumped up beside her, circling once before lying down. She whispered to him in the dark, "You're not just my dog, you're my story." He blinked slowly and rested his head on her chest. For the first time in forever, her dreams were quiet. No screaming, no chains, just flowers and open doors, and the soft footsteps of the dog who carried her into a new beginning.